Hey everyone, welcome back to the Swift Interview Prep series. I'm super excited to dive into some intermediate level questions with you today. In this video, we'll tackle 10 questions that will help you prepare even more for your upcoming iOS developer interviews. Let's jump right in. And don't forget, if you find this video helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more tutorials. Let's get started. Question 11. What's the difference between classes and structs in Swift? Alright, let's kick things off with question 11. What's the difference between classes and structs in Swift? Well, structs are value types. When you pass or assign them, they get copied, and each copy is independent. Structs don't support inheritance, and they're lightweight, making them great for things like simple data models. On the other hand, classes are reference types. This means they share the same instance when passed or assigned, and they do support inheritance. Oh, and classes are managed by ARC, automatic reference counting, whereas structs are not. Basically, if you need something lightweight and don't need inheritance, go with a struct. If inheritance or shared state is needed, a class might be the better choice. For example, if you're creating a model for a person with simple properties, a struct might work. But for more complex models with behavior and inheritance, a class could be a better fit. Question 12. What are protocols in Swift? Moving on to question 12. What exactly are protocols in Swift? Protocols are like blueprints. They define methods and properties that a class, struct, or enum must implement. However, protocols don't provide the actual implementation. Types that adopt a protocol must fill in the details. What's really cool is that Swift allows protocol extensions, so you can provide default implementations for protocol methods. This can be super handy when you want to reuse logic across different types. For example, in iOS development, table views use protocols like UIViewDelegate and UIViewDataSource to handle row selection and data display. Question 13. What are closures, and how do they work in Swift? Next, we have closures. A closure is basically a self-contained block of code that you can pass around and use in your code. It can capture values from its surrounding context, which makes it super flexible, especially for things like callbacks or asynchronous operations. Let me show you a quick example. Here, we've created a closure that takes a name as a parameter and returns a greeting string. Closures are powerful tools for making your code concise and flexible. Closures are super useful in Swift, especially when you're working with async tasks or higher-order functions like map, filter, and reduce. They can take parameters, return values, and even modify variables in their surrounding scope. Question 14. What is automatic reference counting, ARC? Next up, question 14. What is ARC? ARC, or automatic reference counting, is how Swift manages memory. ARC keeps track of how many strong references point to an object. When an object's reference count drops to 0, it's automatically deallocated. Easy, right? But there's a catch: retain cycles. When two objects reference each other strongly, it can prevent ARC from deallocating them. To avoid this, you can use weak or unowned references. Question 15. What's the difference between weak, strong, and unowned references? Let's talk references. Question 15 is about the difference between weak, strong, and unowned references. Strong references are what you typically use. They increase the reference count and keep the object in memory. Weak references don't increase the reference count, and they can become nil if the object is deallocated. You'll see weak references used a lot in delegates. Unowned references don't increase the reference count either, but they don't become nil. Just be careful. If you try to access an unowned reference after the object is deallocated, your app will crash. Question 16. What is the Singleton Pattern, and how do you use it in Swift? On to question 16. The Singleton Pattern. This design pattern ensures that a class has only one instance, and it gives you a global point of access to it. A classic example is a network manager or a database connection manager. You only want one instance managing those connections, right? To implement this in Swift, you can create a static shared instance like this. Now, you can call Singleton, shared anywhere in your app. Question 17. What is delegation, and how is it used in iOS development? Now, question 17. Delegation. This is a super important concept in iOS development. Delegation allows one object to hand off some of its responsibilities to another object. It's a one-to-one communication pattern, typically used with protocols. A common use case? Let's say you have a button. When it's tapped, the button doesn't handle the action. It delegates that responsibility to another object, like a view controller, using a protocol. It's a one-to-one communication pattern and is super useful for separating concerns. Question 18. Can you explain the UIViewController Lifecycle? Question 18 is one you'll likely be asked in most interviews, the UIViewController Lifecycle. In a nutshell, it's the sequence of events that a view controller goes through from its creation to its destruction. Here's the order. Init, then view did load, view will appear, view did appear, view will disappear, view did disappear, and finally dainit. Understanding these stages is important for managing memory, setting up views, and releasing resources efficiently. Question 19. What is the MVC pattern, and how is it used in iOS development? Next up, question 19. The MVC pattern, which stands for Model View Controller. It's one of the most fundamental patterns in iOS development. The model handles data, the view displays the UI, and the controller manages the interaction between them. The controller updates the view when the model changes and vice versa. For example, when you build a to-do app, your model would store the task data, the view would present it in a list, and the controller would handle user interactions like adding or deleting tasks. MVC keeps things organized and separates concerns, which is super important when building large-scale apps. Question 20. How does memory management work in iOS? And finally, question 10. Memory management in iOS. Arc handles a lot of the heavy lifting, but you still need to be mindful of strong references and retain cycles. Avoid memory leaks by using weak and unowned references in appropriate places. And remember, you can override the did receive memory warning method to release non-essential resources when your app is running low on memory. And that's it for today's video. I hope these 10 questions help you feel more confident as you prepare for your iOS interviews. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more Swift interview prep. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.